Hello, I'm Elaine, and I'm a tour guide in the French Quarter. I do ghost tours, and I am not going to tell you the stories that I tell on my tour because you got to pay for those. But if you want to hear some interesting things that have happened to me while I'm leading random drunk people around the French Quarter, I got you.
So tonight was the second night of Swiftageddon. Yes, Taylor Swift is in town performing 3 concerts, 3 nights in a row, the weekend before Halloween. So to say there's a lot of people in town would be a bit of an understatement. It is a bit of a mess out there. Though I do find it utterly hilarious that the entire city of New Orleans was treating this like a natural disaster. Like, I know people who evacuated the city for this weekend. I know people who say they're going to stay home and are not going anywhere near the actual city of New Orleans during this chaos. And I know people who actually did go out and buy food ahead of time, basically storm prep shopped for Taylor Swift. And I'm like, guys, they're Swifties. It's not the purge. Calm down. But honestly, it's been pretty pleasant for me. Like, the traffic hasn't been bad. All the Swifties are well behaved. They're excited. They're cheerful. They're fun. They hand out friendship bracelets to everybody. And they're well behaved on the tours. They aren't puking everywhere. And for me, at least, all my tips have either been mediocre or great. So I welcome our Swiftie overlords. Like, this is fine. But tonight's tour was a disaster. It just wasn't a disaster because of the Swifties. So I had a family-friendly tour today, and it was one of those family-friendly tours that is very much oriented towards families. Everyone on it had kids with them. Some of the kids were as young as probably about 4 or 5. Some of them were as old as like 12 or 13. And that's always a fun mix. But it's going great up until the moment I get to the the coffee house break. They're children. I don't take them to a bar. But we go to the coffee house, and I send them inside, and one family stays outside with me. And the mom explains it's because they actually went to this coffee house right before the tour. And I can tell from the way she's looking at her daughters that the reason they're staying outside is they do not want to buy the young daughters another smoothie. And sure enough, the dad goes inside and gets a smoothie. But the mom and I are just chatting and talking about New Orleans. And she was talking about how loud it is and how many people play music. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty normal. And at least with the Taylor Swift fans in town, it's mostly Taylor Swift music, which means it's family friendly. And that means I don't have to worry as a tour guide leading around small children. And I doomed myself by saying that because at the very next stop, I'm telling a story and I hear music coming down the street. And like, I could hear it coming for quite a while because it was very loud, but it was also moving very slow because it was a guy walking with a speaker, not in a vehicle. But it was, at least for most of the time, muffled by my own voice. And then he gets close enough that I can't speak over him, so I pause and stare in abject horror at my guests. I have been politely informed by someone that this song really is actually titled Pussy in My Mouth. But the chorus, the part that was playing right when he was walking by us, I want your pussy in my mouth, pussy in my mouth, pussy in my mouth, over and over and over again. And I'm staring in horror at my guests, and they're staring in horror back at me, and I'm just like, oh my God. And a couple of little kids are looking confused, and a couple of the older kids are looking a bit shocked. And right when he gets far enough away that someone can be heard over him, one of the little girls just shouts out, "That was inappropriate!" And I'm like, yep, no, it's about cats. I don't know what you're talking about. The song is about cats. It's fine. Let's move on. I finish the story, and I'm like, okay, we're heading off to the next location. And because it is the weekend before Halloween, there are about 7 million tours around the Lalaurie Mansion at any given time. And because of that, whenever possible, I want to take my guests down the side of the road that the house is on, because most of the tours want to stand across from the house. So there's just less likely to run into another tour if I take them down that side. And the problem is, that side is also where the cars park and where there's a lot of trees. And so you can't really see what you're coming up upon until you're actually already on that little stretch of sidewalk. And it's a narrow enough sidewalk. It's a bit hard to avoid anything once you're there. And so I take us down that patch and I look ahead. I'm like, oh, there is a homeless guy sleeping there. And I'm sort of turning towards the woman I'm walking with, who is one of the mothers. And we were actually discussing how inappropriate that song was. And I say, oh, there's a homeless guy right there. We're going to need to be polite, go around him. And right when I say, oh, right there, I look down and realize, yes, there is a guy there. He's not sleeping. Even though he has a blanket draped over him, there is a distinct peak in the blanket, a little point, and that point is moving up and down in a very distinct rhythm. And I look up at the woman who's walking with me, and her eyes are as wide as a saucer. And I'm like, yep, that's what that is. We're going to keep moving past very quickly. And like I'm shouting back at the rest of my guests, come on, guys, come on past very quickly, right this way. And sure enough, I get to the next location, and I am missing one party. And I'm like, I sort of don't even blame them at that point. But the real problem is I then go back to the store after the tour is over to get ready for my next tour. And the second I walk in the store, the first thing I do is look around and make sure that like everyone in the store looks to be an adult. And I go to my boss and I'm like, hey, Monique, just so you know, I might be getting a 1 star off of that review because I just walked a family-friendly tour right next to a guy who was masturbating on the side of the road. And she says, oh, that's fine. I understand. We don't control these things. But you did just say that in front of a child. And I look around, and the girl that was standing next to me, who I had thought was a 20-something girl, because I couldn't really see her face. She was petting the cat, and therefore her face was down. She looked up at me, and I was like, yep, you're right. That girl's like 15. Oh, God. Oh, my God. Now, luckily, her parents did not seem that appalled. Like, the dad half-jokingly covered the daughter's ears, and the mom just sort of laughed and was like, yeah, we brought our kids to New Orleans. We sort of knew they might see or hear a thing or two. But yeah, so the Swifties are not the problem here. It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and be sure to check out my book, Drunks of the French Quarter Theater, available on Amazon, bookshop.org, Barnes & Noble, pretty much wherever.